Hello, everyone, and welcome to the University of Iowa Virtual Visiting Artist Interview Series. I'm here today with Ling Chung. Ling is from Hong Kong and earned her BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in Visual Communications Design in 2012, and her MFA in Ceramics from the Rhode Island School of Design in 2016. Ling has been an artist in residence at Architopia in Puebla, Mexico, Creta, Rome, and also a long-term artist in residence at the Archie Bray Foundation for Ceramic Art in Helena, Montana, and at Pottery Northwest in Seattle, where she is currently in residence. Ling, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure.
Wonderful.
Thanks for inviting me.
We're happy to have you. I have generally started these interviews by asking people just to tell us a little bit about how they got involved in ceramics. Could you tell us some about your beginnings in the medium?
Wow, that's a long story to tell.
So okay.
I didn't really encounter any clay until I came to the States. So back then at home, so I born and raised in Hong Kong until age of 17, and I decided that I wanted to join this foreign exchange program. So basically, the government of the United States picked a random high school in the state. And the place that was being picked was in Wisconsin in this small town called Appleton. So
in
that's
Appleton.
In Appleton.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was there for Appleton North High School for a year, living with an American family for a year as well. And that's actually the first time I encountered with ceramics, because back then in Hong Kong, we don't really have too much of a variety of art medium we can pick. It's mostly just painting, drawing, and having ceramics in Hong Kong is almost like if you're a rich kid in a rich school, you might have that kind of offering, but not that for me. So I didn't know what is ceramics, and my advisor in the high school just signed me up for some ceramics class, and because they say, oh, you're interested in arts, take ceramics. And I come into the class and I was like, what is this? Wise people. Because I was completely in this culture shock and in this new media. So I was very vivid that my first ceramics work, it's the alien hands.
The hands of the alien.
The hands of the aliens.
Yeah.
And it say aliens. I don't know why. That was the first thing I did for a slab building project. So that was my first introduction of ceramics. But I think at that time, I really have to thank for that high school art teacher, Mr. Brown, because as a foreigner in a school where not a lot of people in my speaking the same language as I do, I encounter a lot of like culture shock, as well as try to adjust with new language. And he was generous enough to give me a hall pass to come visit him during lunchtime, so I can learn how to throw on the wheel.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that was kind of like, I think everyone has that little kind of story of like why they feel meaningful to be part of the education programs. And those are the things that kind of affecting you later on in the year.
Yeah.
So I would say that was one of my, the very first person introduced clay to me. And, but it isn't really, it took me a long while before I decided to actually taking ceramics as a career. That is after my undergrad, studying as a visual communication design or / graphic design.
Yeah.
And that was the time I realized that I was in an internship for graphic design, and I absolutely hated it. I hated every single moment of it. I was doing that in a sort of reason of like being in a realistic of, a design firm might give me some incomes. However, that doesn't really come up with, it just kind of put me into a stage where I'm just absolutely hating every single second of my life. And I just realized like, if I really like ceramics, maybe I should think about a way to pursue and make it work. And that's when I think about, I want to be in the field of ceramics. So I spent a year working in a studio called Sur Park Clay Studio, which is in Seattle.
Yeah.
And they were generous enough to give me working there for 8 hours per week, and I have a shelf to use.
Yes, yes.
And I can use the studio when there's no classes. So, which is one of the things that, because of that years being there, I built up an entire portfolio for grad school.
Yeah.
Which is quite amazing. And they have a free studios gallery space for me to just do installation art. So earlier of my work are all installation. And one thing lead to another things. Then I got into grad school at RISD.
Yeah.
And then I got into algebra for residency. And then now I'm on another residency at Pottery Northwest. And so, yeah, that's how it kind of like kept the snowball rolling.
Was it time in between undergrad and getting into RISD to stay? I don't know. I feel like those moments can be really hard when you don't have a community for sure yet, or you're kind of wondering if you're like gonna be good enough or be able to get in somewhere. How did you keep your motivation strong during that time?
I didn't think much.
Yeah.
I just do it. I didn't think like, I think those are the question. I didn't even think about like, am I good enough or not? Like for me at that time, I'm just like in a basic survival stage. It's like, am I gonna make it to another years? And to me as a international artist, I coming here as a visa, so I don't have a green card or anything that to guarantee my stay in the US. So I basically turn on a survival mode to any opportunity I can get, I'll go for it. Yeah. There's no doubt, like there's nothing to hesitate me, because if I can't stay in here, my understanding is that when I have to go back to Hong Kong, everything feels like I have to start everything again. Now that fear chased me down to just do whatever I can do in order to make things work.
Yeah, I can understand how it would be a really strong motivation. Well, it seems like you did incredibly well. I mean, RISD is one of the best schools in the country. So to get in there,
thank you.
You know, it's really great. It's really impressive. What does your current studio practice look like now?
Looks like this.
Like this,
yeah. Background.
Well, I mean, when I think about your work, you know, obviously there's always this element of hair that I've seen a lot, and I've read some things of you talking about your interest in using hair in the pieces, but they generally seem to be mixed media, right? Like a combination of ceramic parts and other elements, and they're very brightly colored. And I guess I wonder if you might talk with us some about your decisions and motivations for using those things.
I started implementing hair into my work, I think was during my second years of grad school at RISD. Simone Lair was my committee members for my thesis. So she walks into my studio. I was like, you know, being in the grad school life, you just do whatever you can because you could. So I just trying all kinds of different things. Like every week I comes up with a completely new body of works. And I remember Simone and Katie, they both come into my studio and tell me they are extremely worried for me. That I have no cohesive works, and it's already 3 quarters before my thesis shows is, and I got nothing really, set in stone. And I was like, okay, all right. What can I do? And at that time I was very obsessed about dyeing my hair, and I have a lot of wigs in my studios, and that was the moment it's something that I really wanted to do, but I hesitate to do it because I don't think I'm doing a good job. Like I feel like I'm gonna make something just completely, totally, just not gonna work. But when fears come, fear is a great motivations. The fears of not able to giving a promising body of work and knowing my midterm is coming next week, I'm just like, I grab the hair, go for it, and I started attaching it into my work. And I started just let go with all this, things that people are expecting me to do, things that I've been doing it for so long. So there's a big flip of my work before 2015 and after that. So even with colors, before then, my work is always focusing on porcelain, almost bare minimum, no glaze. And then after the flip, it's like, to me, it's a bit of more also my realization of like, I no longer feel myself as an outsider in this culture in America.
Yeah.
I begin to realize the language that I spoke and even the way how I process and think are think in English in American way rather than thinking in Cantonese.
Yeah.
Those kind of flip of transitions makes me realize like, hey, I'm part of here. Like I could do whatever I want in a way. Kind of embrace that freedom. And that's where all this mixed medium become part of my work. And hair was the most earliest work that I started implement. And now since I'm in the gray glass city, so I'm doing a lot of glass casting and also working with neon light. So I'm bending a lot of neon light. That's what this piece is.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Did the shift from the work that was very you said like white monochrome, did the shift to color happen at the same time as the hair also?
There so the color were happen a little bit earlier on with glaze.
Okay.
But I wasn't able to find a very cohesive finishing. Like it feels like I just kind of when I'm doing a lot of glaze work into my ceramics work, I feel like there's no a very focused point to where it ends. But when I put on hair, it makes a lot of sense that that I am finishing up the work.
Yes.
Kind of part of a thought process, like, some people will do luster as the way them to say this is the finishing of the work. And for me, adding on another element, it's the ganache on a piece of dessert.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to hear you talk about the process elements of it, especially. I think that's the thing that is sometimes most interesting about other artists. I have a similar, I feel the same way about luster with my work, that like, once I do that, I'm not going to change anything, because it's like burn that off is to spend money, right? Like,
right.
And probably the same with the hair too. Like once it's on there, you don't want to probably take it off. Do you ever with the hair, does it like switch between pieces? Do you ever like reuse it or take it off, or once it's on, is it on there permanently?
Sometimes, well, the great things about hair is that there are so many different ways to styling them.
Yeah.
And I guess another little part about my history is that before I came to the States, I was in a beauty school, but then I dropped out.
Yeah.
So that kind of like that story doesn't really appear to me as anything significant to my work until like 2 years ago. And I realized like, I've been really obsessed to become a hairdresser since I was young. And I just never thought those connection comes together until later on as you more discover your work. And I think that's also the beauty of art making, is that it allows you to discover a lot of part of yourself that you don't even realize it was part of you. So the hair, sometimes I restyling them, but a lot of times
on the piece,
I give them a little different haircut. I braid them differently.
That's wonderful.
And sometimes I can sculpting it a little differently from adding other like a wire as an amateur, so I can bend. And so there are couple pieces that I have that I wasn't quite satisfied with the first time when I done it, so I can redo it again. But in terms of where the hair is and the color that I chose, those are keeping it the same. So because I literally just grew them onto each little piece of hair.
Yeah.
It's the most time-consuming process.
Oh, I'm sure. Do you fire the ceramic work to cone 6 or cone 04, or what range firing?
Depends on what free clay I got.
What-
Right. So currently, Pottery Northwest, their clays, reclaimed clay studio are cone 6. So I fire them majority to cone 6, then I bring it down to cone 04. And then depends on how I like the surface. Sometimes we fire on cone 6 multiple times and then bring it down to cone 04 and then we fire again and again.
Yeah.
For cone 6, I don't do it as much just because of, I wanted to ensure my sculpture survives through the heat shot of refiring. So, but I do a lot of refiring on 04. Then if sometimes I feel really fancy, I go luster firing as well. So yeah, so that's what usually the temperature goes, cone 6, 04, and 018. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And are the pieces mostly hand built or thrown or slip cast, or how are you making them?
Most of them are hand building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like when I've looked at your work, what's really interesting to me about it is that it often takes me a long time to see the form underneath the hair and all the color. So it's like in my mind, I can sort of picture what your work looks like, having seen a lot of it online. But it would be really hard for me to say exactly what the underneath form, generally looks like, because all I think about is the hair and the color of it. And I find that to be really fascinating because usually we have a different kind of idea of the structure of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of ornamentation that I see you do is so there's so much excess of it that it becomes, I think, difficult, at least for me when I see it, to know exactly what's happening underneath all of those things.
Yeah, I think with that part, I do have quite a few things can talk about it. It really is that like for the process of my work, I'm not necessarily thinking about what form I am building, but I'm more thinking about what glaze that I want them to be performed. So glaze itself have a lot of actions. It can crawl, it can drip, it can shatters, and they do a lot of things. And I'll think about an action word for the glaze. And with that actions, then I create this form and allowing them the glaze to pull, to crawl, to sit in, or to drip. So to me, the form itself, it's like a stages for my glaze to perform. And I am a stage designer, also a theater director, and the refiring is a performance. So they will keep rehearsal, refiring again and again until I realize that, okay, you guys ready for a show? Let's dress up. So
Nice.
and it's interesting you say that, like my work almost, like form isn't something that can pop up in the mind at first. And I think that for that part, it's a little bit more philosophical for me to, I don't really want people to think about my work. I want them to almost get lost in the materials rather than thinking about, I'm using hair in my work, I'm using ceramics, I'm using glaze. Maybe it's okay just to enjoy the color that it's providing as the visualizations, rather than jump right into what does the hair mean? Does that mean culture? What does ceramics mean? Does that mean pottery, craft arts? What is it? Like, it's kind of like in our current social climates, I guess, we, particularly in this country, is that we are so many different people. Like, even one individual can represent so many different culture. So how can you really identify one person based on areas they come from? And which is something that I've been thinking about a lot of that lately, just to thinking what it means of identity when we always ask the question of where we're from, but the thing is that where we're from sometimes not necessarily validated, because the country can be disappeared tomorrow. And so asking where from, does that even mean anything to that person anymore? So then just kind of like going back to that individuality of expressing freedom their own personality shine through, rather than having their physical appearance to take over who they are. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a lot under the layer of my work that I
Yeah.
love.
No, I think it's a
Yeah.
great description. I mean, that's what I see when I look at the work. I mean, I think it is doing that from my perspective, and I've been a sort of a distant observer. You know, like this is the first time that you and I have really talked. We've talked at Insika like maybe once. I think I met you, but
And
this
Sika
is
is always too crazy.
too crazy. Yes, but but to talk in depth about your work, I mean, I really think that this is how I have viewed it, is that I see it, and the first thing I notice is this very brightly colored, and then I figure out that there is some hair there, or, you know, little parts of the color pieces I start to understand, and then if I really concentrate, I can sort of make out what the piece is. So to me, like, yeah, I think it really operates the way you're talking about.
Oh, thank you. It's
Yeah,
good to
it's
hear.
wonderful. Yeah, no, I think it's beautiful work. So I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about something that's inspiring to you or meaningful. I've asked most of the participants on our series to either share an object or a piece of work that has been interesting to them. And I wonder if you have anything that sticks out for you like that.
Yeah, I can sharing a work that I have that I find it's, I'll say that it's something that stand out with me when you ask me that questions in my mind.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can figure this one out. This is, I would say that the pieces itself, I made it during the time when I had the break. But
Yeah.
then I didn't glaze it or anything. I bring it back to Pottery Northwest, which was my next residency. And I kind of leave it in the dust for a while before I pick it up and actually work on it.
Yeah.
And I was making this in last year around May and June. And that's when everything in my hometown in Hong Kong kind of getting through a upheaval stage where all the protests are happening.
Yeah.
And I personally not a very politics. I don't outspoke a lot of politics in public as much, but it's always been a things that I've been growing up with when British has turned over for to China during 1997,
Yeah.
and so Hong Kong turned into become part of China again.
Yeah.
And after 99 years of being colonized by the Great Britain.
Yeah.
And so I have two passports, a British passport and then turned into a Hong Kong passport.
Uh-huh.
So that's always in the times where it's a debate of, you know, what's my identity is. And during that couple months of protests that was happening during the summer, I was very shockingly to see how place I grew up with, or even city or hometown where place where I would go walk by every time I go to high school, and
Yeah.
that people got shot in there. It's just like, those are the things within the years that I was living there is unheard of. But then at the same time is that I've been here for 12 years. Like, how much can I outspoke for? Am I still represented by my hometown? Like, what more can I do? So I think that moment of times when I was making this work, really those kind of fears and longing for comfort came to me.
Yeah.
And then I finishing building these pieces, and I'm still wondering, like, why am I making this work? And then I tumble upon and realize that once I finish this work, it looks like this images.
Uh-huh.
And this images is a goddess called Guan Yin, and this is a goddess that my mom prayed for us every morning. And that is something that I identify since I grew up as something, it's a comforting objects.
Yeah.
That I know. And I think why, you know, subconsciously I'm seeking for comfort, this imagery pop into my work. And that makes this work so meaningful to me now. That when you first asked me that questions.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. I feel like this piece you're showing us is the line quality is really similar, like the movement of the parts of your piece, the braids, and then the parts of that image were very similar in terms of how the line quality worked. I can see those relationships.
Yeah.
Well, this is really wonderful, and I wonder if you might tell us, as in closing, a little bit about where people can see your work. I know you said you had a solo show coming up in July at Method Gallery in Seattle. Where else can people see work of yours?
So I am so I will be doing a Instagram takeover live videos next Thursday. So depends on when this video being posted.
Probably early next week I'll post it. So
yeah, I believe was the 30th of April. So I'll be doing a live video through Pottery Northwest Instagram from 5 p.m. from the West Coast times. So Central times is 6. Math
maybe
is
7.
hard.
I think we're 2 hours.
7.
2 hours.
So at 7, and I'm also doing a takeover, Instagram takeover for NCCA, because I am also this year's emerging artist.
I should have said that in your bio. That's a huge honor. Congratulations.
I even forgot about it. Because it just, I mean, it is going to still happening. And so I'm going to do a Instagram takeover from June 22nd to 27. So I'll be posting my work and talking more. And potentially, if that times my studio are available again, I will do a studio visit on my actual studio, not just a virtual background.
Right.
So those are the two that if you want to ask any question, those are a great place. And in July, I have 2 shows happening. One solo show in Method Gallery, and it's a show that I got through because I got this fellowship grant through a Pratt Fine Arts Center. And one of this fellowship is that they will provide me a mentorship with Method Gallery, which is sponsored by Chihuly Glass and Garden Museum. And so, and they will help me out with the solo exhibitions. And hopefully in that solo show, it's my representation of what it means to project projecting the culture of Hong Kong again, while I'm in a position as an immigrant in America. And so, and I also curate a show called Skinny Dip. It will be on Soil Gallery, and it's a artist-run gallery, and there will be 4 other artists also showing on the same times. And both of the location of the gallery, it is in Seattle, and I'm currently represented by Travers Gallery, which is also in Seattle downtown. So you can see some of my work over at that website as well. So those are the places you can see.
Yes.
And and Instagram as well.
Yes, and I will put links to all of these things here in the video so that everyone can see. And Ling's Instagram is @whoissherry.
Yay.
So you can find her there as well. Ling Chung, thanks so much for being with us today. It's been really wonderful.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.